Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at this M-G12 from Sanyo, all the way from the mid-80s. A lovely looking unit, quite a handsome beast really, nicely chiselled, and yeah, quite a few little features on here which is quite nice. It's only a tape player, there's no radio, no EQ per se, but there is a high and low tone switch on the top. There's also a master volume here and a left and right balance potentiometer as well. Also got a mute switch here, and this is a momentary switch which just allows temporary attenuation of the sound, so that if you're speaking to someone with your headphones on, you can just press the mute switch and obviously it allows the ambient noise to come through much better. Single headphone socket there, and indeed a LED battery status light. And as I say, no EQ except for the tone switch, so no sliders or anything, no radio, no auto reverse, no Dolby or anything like that. But nonetheless, handsome little unit, made in Japan. And in terms of transport controls, we've got the stop, play, fast forward and rewind. Now, this would come with a belt clip ordinarily, a plastic one. Someone, I have to laugh, it's a bit of a nervous laugh really, but it should have a plastic belt clip just there with a machine screw that holds it into a little brass insert on the back case. Now it looks to me like someone may well have actually, they've got this kind of DIY belt clip, which to be fair will do the job just fine, but it's not original, and I do wonder and worry whether or not they've chewed up the thread on the brass insert, but that's by the by. As it happens, I don't know if this even works at all. I've bought it as not working. Basically it's dirty, it's grimy, but overall it looks really presentable and it seems to be in really nice condition. So I think what we'll do is we'll give it a quick test, see whether or not it works, and we'll go from there. And so the first thing I'm going to do is plug in 6 volts DC negative pin, and I'm using the multi adapter here. I've done a video on this adapter which is quite a nice little bit of kit, so do check out that video. I'm just looking down into the socket as I'm talking to you now because it looks pretty grimy in there, so I am just going to put some contact cleaner in there just to try and give this a little bit of a go. Alright, let's see if it actually plays. Okay, well we've got drive and rewind works, fast forward works. Okay, well that seems okay on the face of it, so I think what we'll do now is put some batteries in just to see if that side works as well. And as I say, 6 volts, so there's 4 batteries, and we'll get those in now. Right, here we go. Good, so that works. Rewind, fast forward. Marvellous. Right, okay, good. So we've got power from the mains and we've got power from the batteries as well. So I suppose we ought to see whether or not it's actually running to any sort of decent speed or not, and whether the belt needs replacing. The plan today is to give this one a decent wipe. We're going to change the main drive belt at least, and then yeah, just we'll probably get the mech out, give it a decent clean and go from there. So I'm going to use some headphones. I've normally got my JSX37 speakers, but I need to do a running repair on them as well, so the jack socket's playing up a little bit on them, so we're not going to get a true representation of whether or not the actual headphone socket is okay. So I'm just going to try this now with the tape in, and we'll check for volume crackle and the balance working and all that sort of stuff. So let's just do that a minute. Oh, did you hear that? It was making very, yeah, that's the slipping. Let me see if I can get that in closer for you. So yeah, it's barely fast forwarding or rewinding. I'm just looking at that, and I have a listen to this real quick. All right, and then it just dies a death. So I think the we've probably got a gnarled up belt in there. So there's no point checking much else. I'm just going to check, see if I can hear any crackle from the volume or the balance. Everything seems okay, to be fair. So let's crack it open and yeah, we'll go from there, get a belt on it and see if that improves the issue. That really was a sorry old state, wasn't it? But what I could do with the headphones on is tell that pretty much everything else worked okay. I just need to give it a bit of a clean, especially the mute switch just needed a little bit of a clean. But anyway, here we go. So let's get these screws off the back case. So we've got two very short machine screws there, and then we've got the two longer ones on this side. Now it looks like I'm going to have to get rid of this belt clip as well, probably. Yeah, you can see what they've done there. They've basically put some sort of tape, industrial tape on there, and probably chewed up the original bezel as well, or at least the insert that would screw into. Well, I don't know, actually, we might get away with it. We'll see. Let's clean this up in a bit and have a look. But first I just want to get the back off of this. Of course, I nearly forgot the magic fifth screw at the bottom here. A bit like the 440 and things like that. It's got a tiny little screw just in the bottom, which I did forget about briefly. But anyway, there we go. Incidentally, there's a little hole there as well, which allows you to set the motor speed or adjust the motor speed like so, if you need to. Yeah, you can see they've obviously put a bit of something in there, a bit of insulation tape or what have you, to stop the screw from contacting on the board. But we'll see if we can address that. We might be able to pinch an insert out of something else. Right then, anyways, let's have a look. So we've got a small screwdriver just for this tiny screw here with the washer, and I believe, there we go, and there is the insides of the machine. Beautiful. So again, it's like the M-G12, it's got the dual flywheels there for extra inertia for your anti-rolling mechanism. You can see the belt path is actually printed quite handily onto the actual circuit board there. And yeah, very nice, very simple, very easy to get to everything, to give it a clean. We'll get some switch and contact cleaner just in there, a little bit of drop of alcohol into the potentiometers. But yeah, you know, she is what she is. The leaf switch looks to be in decent condition, and I'm just going to clean everything over really. But the main reason we're in here though, basically, is because of this belt. And if you have a look at it, it's proper shonky look. I mean, you can spin either one or all of these pulleys, and they are somewhat of a mess, bless them. There we go. So that's that one there. There is also a secondary belt just inside, but we may get away with that one, because to do that you've got to get the whole mech apart, get the flywheel out, separate the mechanism, because the belt itself is really quite tricky to get to be honest, or more than that, tricky to put back together afterwards. So I think what I'm going to do is just put a new main drive belt on and see if that fixes the issue. Now we could tell that the spindle is okay on the motor, so that doesn't need oiling, that's fine. Just going to give a quick lick of alcohol around the pulley surfaces there, just as the belt was on its way out, so it might be starting to degrade a tiny bit. Let's just clean those flywheels a minute. I'm just going to run a tiny little bit of alcohol deep into those pulleys. Yeah, not too bad, pretty clean, but always nice to do it if you get the opportunity. Make sure you've got a nice free running surface there. There we go, lovely. And you might just see some of the dirt that's come out. Not the end of the world, but certainly worth doing. Good stuff. Just while I'm here, I'm going to drop a little bit of alcohol onto the potentiometers. They actually weren't too bad, to be fair, but it's always worth just giving them a little bit of a clean through whilst you're here. And then just on the switches, tiny bit of contact cleaner inside the headphones and the mute switch. And the tone switch as well. And a tiny little bit of lubricant. Nice. And then what I like to call a bit of a zhuzh. Just getting to the nooks and crannies that you can't normally get to when the case is actually all together. Just clean out the residue, dust and general grime. Okay. Jolly good. Now if you want to clean the head and the capstan and indeed the pinch roller, we can do that easy enough, to be honest, from inside. We could take the mech out, and to take the mech out we would need to do that probably if we were looking at replacing the inner belt. We haven't got to do that today, I don't think. And I did an M-G12 yesterday and I took all the mech out. Basically you've got some posts there and a screw that needs to come out. The whole thing can come out for access, but to be honest, the transport controls are all working and moving nicely. Nothing's impinged or graunching. The spring here for the lid is all intact. Everything's tickety-boo, so there's no point taking it apart any more than we need to today. What we will do though is get a new belt on. And I hope and I think that one of my batch of belts that I got in yesterday for my M-G12 should do the trick. So this is a Deck Tech belt. Again, a precision drive belt. And as I always say, and it's true, I'm not sponsored by them, so I just like their service. They're brilliant service, brilliant product, so always great to use them. And yep, sure enough, it's the same mech, so 65 by 1mm belt. Perfect. Good, I'm happy with that. Yep, so I'm not sponsored by anyone. And yeah, so I don't have any money coming in from the channel. I haven't received a penny as yet for the channel. I kind of do it for the love of it and to share stuff with you, but obviously there are costs involved in operating it. So if you have got the odd £1 or £2 to spare, then do please go on the Buy Me a Coffee link and maybe just donate a couple of quid towards belts and stuff like that. It'd be massively appreciated. You don't have to, of course. You're more than welcome to listen to me rabbit on free of charge. That's your prerogative, but if you do get the chance, I'd massively appreciate it. But anyway, let's get this back together. And you've just got to make sure that everything locks back into place. And indeed, I'll just show you actually as well. There is that leaf switch, which is, it says power switch there. And those leaves actually get pushed together. When you press play, it activates. Can you see? Let me just try and find it on the camera. There's a tiny little white pin there, and that moves. Let me just try and do that again. Right, here we go. There, can you see that? So what it does is when a button is pressed, it basically moves this actuating lever, which turns the leaf switch on. So obviously when you put it back together, you have to make sure that the pin is in the right place, i.e. furthest from the flywheel. And then when you put it back together, which can be a little bit fiddly, there we go. And then you've also got a viewing window as well, so you can see through the little viewing window just to make sure that the pin is moving. Then you know you're good to screw it back into place. We'll get the little circuit board screw back on now. A couple of reasons. One, holds it in place properly whilst we do a test run, and B, it earths everything down and stops any hum from touching the metal surfaces or what have you. So hopefully that should do the trick. Now then, where's those headphones? And with a bit of luck, this should work. So we'll get some power into it as well. And there we go. Right, good stuff. So I'll get my tape in. Press play, see what happens. Yes, it's playing nicely. It's rewinding. Fast forward is struggling though. I wonder if it's that inner belt, you know. I think I'm actually going to have to go in there and change that inner belt after all. Play's working perfectly. The rewind is working perfectly, but the fast forward is not. So it looks like we might have to go ahead after all and get deeper into the belly of this thing and replace that other belt. So to that end, let's get this back off a minute. Okay. So play. What we're going to try and do, if we can, that is, I'm going to try and hook this back up. And you can see the power switch working. I'm going to go to rewind. And if I go to fast forward, which was the one that was slipping, yeah, it's working now. Might just need cleaning up a bit perhaps. Yeah, there's not much drive though, there's not much resistance there. Yeah, I think that second belt's slipping, so I'm just going to get this out, I think. And despite our best efforts, I think we are going to have to just go for it and get this apart. Good news though is that the original belt that we've just put on, the new one I mean, is perfect. So that's good news. So just going to take these posts out. And there's one post in each corner. And then the little screw here, little Phillips screw. Like so. Okay, so now we've got to try and get the mechanism out. Just got to be careful. And there we go. The trick really is just to try and press in the play button to clear the casing as you go, and then hopefully that should do the trick. Now here we have ourselves the mech and obviously the circuit board, and I think it might be easier just to get the whole thing away with the battery terminals as well. I don't want to take them off, I don't want to desolder them at the battery terminals, because I think we'll find ourselves in a situation, yeah, they won't pull out of here easily, and I don't want to desolder them from there because I'll end up melting the plastic and stuff. So I'm just going to take them off of the actual circuit board itself. Just carefully peel the tape back. And we just make a note that the yellow's on the top and the blue is on the bottom. And that just means we can move the case away, get in there, give it a decent clean inside and out. And it also means we can now service the mech and do anything else we need to do. Now we have some fun now, because you can see the mechanism, you can see the two flywheels. We'll put a drop of oil actually on these later, It's just nice to make sure you know how the mechanism works before you strip it apart. So always take some photos first. And the first thing I need to do is actually get the flywheel away. I need to get the E-clip off. Extremely tiny E-clip that flung itself across the bench. Fortunately we managed to find it, so I'll just keep that safe. That does allow us to withdraw the flywheel. Just going to get that little split washer away as well. And that allows the flywheel to come away. Has to go around the bottom pulley, if you can see that. So we'll clean all that up in a bit anyway. But here's the belt. Okay. And you can see that that's totally captive. So we've now got to get rid of a few different screws now, 3 small screws. So one with the shield, and you have to watch out for the springs as well. Sometimes it's easier to remove some of these springs first. Sometimes they're not too bad, but anyway. And I think you need to remove this one from this gear. And catch the pulley that fell off, little pulley that goes on with the gear onto there, which is where the belt actually goes, by the way. And there's the secondary belt. You can see that one's seen better days, so that's why it's been slipping, it's all over the place. Right, I'm going to try and find a replacement for that, and we'll be back in a minute. Righty-ho, so here's another one. And I think this is a 1.5mm. This is a deck tech belt as well, and hopefully this one will do the job. Quite a chunky one, as you can see, but the new one is round and the old one isn't, so it's got to be an improvement. And just clean the capstan. There we go. And the pulley. Just get it all nice and clean and tidy again. Ready to refit. So to get it back together, basically you just got to put these washers, put the pulley back on. Sort of like so. And the tiniest drop of oil onto the flywheel. Rightio, well I've just taken a few minutes to clean the case whilst I can get into it. I'll give it a proper deep clean and polish afterwards on the outside, but I wanted just to get into the nooks and crannies whilst whilst we've got it all open. So that's all good. Right, okay, well I've got the mech back together, and it was a tricky one, I've got to be honest. These ones always are. I knew it would be, but the belt's now running nicely. It's much truer than it was before. You can probably see it just inside there. So yeah, I was hoping I might have got away with this one, but we found out in the end that actually it was a little bit too worn, a little bit too misshapen. In fact, here it is, and it was affecting the performance with the rewind and fast forward, so obviously had to go. Anyway, that's all done now. I've oiled the capstan, so that's all there. Just need to get the little washer back on and the E-clip, and I'll drop a little bit of oil on the other flywheel as well, and then clean that up. And then we'll just clean the head, I think, and the capstan, the pinch roller, and just make sure everything's tickety-boo before we reassemble it. So the little oil washer back onto there, and a tiniest little E-clip. Now you can take that tiny little E-clip off and lubricate it directly, but what I've opted to do here is just run a little bit down there, spin it up, and I'll get some alcohol, just clean up the residue so that we don't contaminate anything. Because those E-clips are really tricky to get back on, to be honest. Not only are they mega tiny, but they're inset as well, so that they're really hard to actually kind of get anything in to lock them down. So anyway, that's that. Right, a fresh Q-tip, and we'll clean the head. Doesn't look too bad. Not too bad at all, actually. Yeah, hardly anything coming off of that. We'll do the capstan though again, because remember we oiled that just now. That's squeaky clean, good stuff. And we'll just work our way through doing the pinch roller as well. That's got a fair bit of ferrite on there, so we'll just clean that up a bit. You can start to see that coming off probably already. So anyway, I'm going to go and just keep cleaning this up, and obviously then, you know, cleaning up any dust, general sort of detritus from the mech itself. I'll be back in a few minutes. Well, that pinch roller was pretty grim, but it's all cleaned up now, and I've got to say I reckon that'll pull like a train now. So anyway, I'm just going to start getting this all back in, and hopefully it will work. You never know. Like I say, this mech was a bit of a nightmare. You have to kind of get these little gears and cogs off, but yeah, it all falls apart inside. There's all sorts of tiny springs inside, so just make sure you know exactly where everything is. Take photos as you go, and you should be alright. Good stuff. Right, okay, let's get this back together then. So I'm going to put the belt on, like so. Right, now we've got to be careful because the LED has to slide into the little receptacle just here. So everything's fitted pretty much back into place now, and you just have to check in that tiny little view hole there that the switch is operating when you press the play, fast forward and rewind. You've also just slid the little battery LED into the tiny little groove just there, and now all we need to do is solder the motor leads back on, or the battery leads I should say, and we should be in business. So I'm just going to get a bit of flux on there. Right, so the mech is now back in the chassis, everything's lined up, and just screwed it down with the circuit board screw just there. I'll put the back cover on loosely for a minute, get some power on, so hopefully it will play. And also, if you remember, the fast forward wasn't working terribly well because of that dodgy secondary belt inside. Let's just see what we've got now. Press play. Good, that's working. Rewind and fast forward. Marvellous. Okay, well, let's get some headphones in then and just see whether or not it's actually playing okay in terms of the audio output and the speed. So volume balance to central. Right, here we go then. Let's see, place your bets, as they say. Good stuff. That's working. Fast forward. Yep. Rewind. And play. Good stuff. Alright, well I might mess about with the speed on that playback during editing for no other reason, just to avoid any sort of copyright strikes or content matches and stuff like that. But good stuff, so it's all working alright. So we're going to put it all back together now, screw it back together, give it a decent polish and go from there. I'm hoping I might be able to do something actually with this belt clip, but we'll see how we get on with that in a minute. Right, okay, let's give it a bit more of a clean, shall we? Just thinking about this back case a minute, it looks very much like, in fact they have taken the brass ferrule out. There is a little insert just there, you may see. Obviously that's embedded into the plastic, and it's got a small sort of metric thread which would accept the back of that screw just there. And if you look on the other side, there's an E-clip that retains that screw, and it doesn't go in by much, a very fine pitched thread. But obviously the brass insert is missing, look, from inside of there. So what they've done is basically used an aftermarket sort of generic clip as a belt clip with a coarser. They've cut down a screw, but it's got a coarser pitch on it, so it's basically not going to screw into a brass ferrule replacement, even if we could get one. I mean, you can buy those nutserts, I think, in that pitch, and we could probably, if we wanted to, buy a bunch of those, resin bond or hot glue one back into there, and then, you know, put the original one on. But our options, I think, are going to be twofold. One is to put the one that was on it originally, which, to be fair, didn't look too bad. It served the purpose, and the chrome on that red actually looks quite nice. My personal preference, though, because of the general condition of the rest of it, which is really nice, or will be once it's polished, my preference would be to at least retain the aesthetic of the original one. So I'm wondering if there's a halfway house here that we can do, which would involve just removing that little E-clip and perhaps using the new screw as were to retain an old belt clip that I've got from another unit. So I think to that end, I'm just going to get a little screw on that a minute. A screwdriver, I should say. We'll just see if we can get this E-clip away. Right, so there's the retaining E-clip and the screw. So what we could do, if I can find the original, let's say original, the original one to this unit. There we go. Now, question is, will that one go through? I don't think it protrudes enough. I don't think it gives us enough of a thread actually now to go into the... Oh, it's a shame. Okay. So we're between two shores here now. Basically, we either put the original one to the unit back on. I was hoping I could have used the aftermarket screw with the original style clip, but the plastic is too thick and it's just not poking out, see, through there, not enough to go in and get any turns of thread on there. So I'd have to find another screw and cut it down to slightly longer than that and hope that the thread matches the one that's in that hole there. Or I just say, do you know what, we go for it and put the aftermarket belt clip back on. I think for now I probably will. It's kind of winter and it's grizzly and wet and horrible out there, and I don't want to forage around in the workshop, if I'm blatantly honest, to try and find the right screw to try and cut it down to... I'll get me whittering on and just thinking out loud, really. If we had to, if our lives depended on it, of course we could get nutserts, I could get a longer screw, we'd sort this out. I'm only dithering because I like everything to be original, especially when the rest of it is in such good condition. But right now, I just don't know whether there's any real merit in sorting that out. Right, okay. Alrighty, the pondering continues. Whatever happens, the first thing I'm going to have to do is get rid of this nasty, horrible cloth tape. It's been on there for about 300 years. It's all dried, it's gone brittle, but it's stuck. Let's clean up the residue, at least see what we've got. Just using some sticky stuff remover. This stuff's great for getting old adhesive and residue away. Takes a little while, but just use a cotton bud, fingernails, plastic scrapers, spudgers, whatever you want. Nothing that's going to damage the paintwork though, and just keep going until all the residue's gone. Well, I couldn't help myself. I've cleaned this up and just gone down to the other workshop and found a very small nut here, which is the right one for the thread for the original screw. So that means I can basically bed this one. If I can get this to work, I can bed that in there with a little bit of resin, and hopefully should be able to use the original screw back on there, which means we can use an original style belt clip. Happy days. So there's that nut insert. Now I've actually used a little bit of a Dremel here just to let it back in a tiny bit, and I'll melt some a little bit of heat just around the side there, and I've also got some hot glue which I'll just use to melt in and around the back just to seal it all in, make sure it's safe and isn't going to go anywhere. Well, there we go, that's all glued and sort of hot welded in. So all that remains is to screw this in. Much better, lovely. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to get it all screwed back together, give it a polish, and time for a final reveal. So here it is then, the Sanyo M-G12 from the 1980s. Lovely unit with the anti-rolling mech with the dual flywheel there. Wasn't without its problems though. It needed a clean and a polish, and we've also obviously cleaned the tape path as well. So the head, the capstan, the pinch roller, given the general mech a decent clean. We have also oiled the flywheels. Now we knew that the main belt had definitely gone, so we replaced that, only to find out that the dreaded secondary belt on this had also worn. So that meant taking the whole mech apart, and I did spare you some of the grief actually in this video, because these mechs are quite tricky. There's tiny little springs and cogs and gears and pulleys all over the place, but just be careful when you take those apart, because that secondary belt really is a nightmare to get to inside that mech there. But anyway, we've put it all back together. Also, of course, we had the issue with the belt clip. Now the original one was pretty grim, insofar as it was basically a kind of clip from a DIY store or something, and it did the job, I guess, and it had a butchered cut down screw holding it in. But anyway, we I guess against our better judgment decided to do it properly. So I had an old belt clip from this model hanging around, and put a new nut in there to receive the original screw as well. So hopefully that should tidy things up and just make it a lot more original and a nicer unit. So let's give it a go, see what we're up against. So if I just press play now. There we go, a bit of Fleetwood Mac on there. And fast forward. Stop, rewind, stop and play. So of course we've got some decent belts on there. Both the belts have been replaced, oiled, cleaned, lubed, everything, given it a decent polish, and put it all back together again, so ready to go. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do consider subscribing, and thank you very much to existing subscribers. As always, I appreciate your support massively. Stay tuned, I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, stay safe. Bye bye.